Picture this. You're standing on the deck of a ship watching 65-foot waves crash over the bow like liquid mountains. The wind is screaming at 70 miles per hour. Ice the size of skyscrapers drifts past your window, and you're not even halfway across. This is the Drake Passage, and it doesn't care about your survival. For centuries, this stretch of water has been the ultimate test. Not a wall, not a gate. Just 600 miles of pure, unfiltered chaos between South America and Antarctica. Over 800 ships have tried to cross it and failed. More than 10,000 sailors never made it home. But here's the thing that'll keep you watching. Some of the most incredible survival stories in human history happened right here. Stories so unbelievable, they sound like fiction. Stories of men eating raw penguin meat to survive. Stories of ships crushed like tin cans. Stories of impossible rescues that defy every odd. This is the Drake Passage. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why it's earned its reputation as the deadliest waterway on Earth. The geography of nightmares. Let's start with the basics, because understanding this place is like understanding your enemy. The Drake Passage stretches 600 miles between Cape Horn, Chile, and the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica. It's the narrowest gap between Antarctica and any other continent. Think of it as Earth's bottleneck, where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans squeeze together in a violent embrace. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just another shipping route. It's the only place on Earth where water from every major ocean can flow freely around the globe, uninterrupted, unstoppable. And the reason this nightmare exists? A geological divorce that took millions of years to finalize. When continents break up, millions of years ago, Antarctica and South America were joined at the hip, literally, connected by land, like conjoined twins sharing the same body. But then Earth's tectonic plates had other plans. Slowly, and I mean slowly, these continents began drifting apart. The connection stretched, cracked, finally snapped. When that gap opened, something extraordinary happened. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current was born, the only ocean current on Earth that circles the entire planet without interruption. It flows west to east around Antarctica, moving a staggering volume of water and energy. This current isolated Antarctica from warmer northern waters. It triggered the growth of those massive ice sheets. It transformed our entire global climate system. But here's the cruel irony. The same current that reshaped Earth's climate also flows directly through the Drake Passage. With no land to slow it down, it builds speed, power, and unpredictability. It's like nature created the perfect storm machine and then placed it right in the path of anyone trying to reach Antarctica. The misnamed passage. Now, here's a plot twist that would make Hollywood jealous. The Drake Passage wasn't actually discovered by Drake. In 1525, Spanish navigator Francisco de Hoces was sailing south when violent winds pushed his ship far off course. His crew spotted what seemed to be a vast expanse of open water, suggesting South America might not be connected to any southern continent. The Spanish called it Mar de Hoces in his honor, but that name wouldn't stick. Fast forward to 1578. English privateer Sir Francis Drake, yes, that Drake, passed through the Strait of Magellan with 3 ships, Marigold, Elizabeth, and his flagship, Golden Hind. Then nature intervened. A violent storm blew them south into uncharted waters. Marigold was lost. Elizabeth turned back. Only Drake's Golden Hind survived and emerged into the open ocean. Drake never deliberately sailed the passage that bears his name. He was blown there by accident. But that accidental discovery proved something crucial to the English. There was indeed open sea south of the continent. It wasn't until 1616 that Dutch explorer Willem Schouten became the first to intentionally navigate the full Drake Passage. His successful voyage opened a new route to the Pacific, one not dependent on the narrow, unpredictable Strait of Magellan. But success came at a price. And that price was measured in ships, lives, and human suffering. The perfect storm machine. So what makes the Drake Passage so deadly? It's not just one thing, it's everything, all at once. First, wind. With no land to block it, wind travels around the globe almost without interruption. It builds speed and power like a freight train. Gusts regularly hit 70 miles per hour. On bad days, they hit much harder. Second, waves. All that wind transfers energy into the water. Combine that with strong currents, and waves can reach 30 feet high. Some have been recorded at nearly 65 feet. Imagine a 6-story building made of water, moving at 30 miles per hour. Third, currents. The Antarctic circumpolar current doesn't just flow fast, it accelerates through the narrow gap. This creates eddies, circular movements of water that can throw a ship completely off course. Fourth, ice. Massive icebergs break off Antarctica and drift north. Some are larger than entire cities. Navigation becomes a deadly game of three-dimensional chess. And here's the kicker. All of these hazards can appear at once. In fact, they usually do. The graveyard begins. Long before satellite forecasts or radar, sailors ventured into these waters with nothing but courage and prayer. Some made it through, many didn't. Let me tell you about the HMS Wager, because this story will show you exactly what happens when the Drake Passage decides to flex its muscles. In 1741, during a British naval expedition to the Pacific, the HMS Wager attempted to round Cape Horn. As it entered the Drake Passage, the ship became separated from its squadron in brutal weather, an all-too-common scenario in these waters. Pounded by storms and struggling to stay afloat, the ship was eventually driven onto the rocky coast of southern Chile. The impact was devastating, but the real horror was just beginning. Stranded in a remote and unforgiving landscape, discipline quickly broke down. What followed wasn't just a fight for survival, it was open mutiny, disputes over leadership, dwindling supplies, escape plans that fractured the crew. Of the 120 men who had departed England aboard the HMS Wager, only 10 would eventually make it home to tell the story. The rest either perished in the wreck, died in the aftermath, or vanished into the wilderness of South America. The HMS Wager disaster remains one of the most chaotic and tragic episodes ever linked to the Drake Passage. But that was just the beginning of the passage's appetite for destruction. The Vanishing Act, one of the most haunting tragedies linked to the Drake Passage, is the wreck of the San Telmo, a Spanish naval vessel that simply vanished in 1819. The ship had departed from Buenos Aires on July 9th, bound for Montevideo. But as it entered the southern latitudes, it likely encountered a powerful storm system while navigating the treacherous waters of the Drake Passage. The San Telmo was last sighted on September 2nd, near the eastern edge of the South Shetland Islands, just off the coast of Antarctica. After that, nothing. Complete silence. All 644 crew members aboard are believed to have perished in the freezing southern ocean. No survivors, no wreckage, no answers. Just another ghost ship claimed by the Drake Passage. But sometimes, survival stories emerge from this graveyard. Stories so incredible, they redefine what human endurance means. Trapped in ice, the Belgica Nightmare. In 1897, the Belgica, a Belgian research vessel, set sail from Antwerp on a daring scientific expedition to Antarctica. After braving the brutal waters of the Drake Passage, the crew pushed deeper into the unknown. What began as a mission of discovery quickly turned into a battle for survival. Caught in the grip of thick sea ice, the ship became trapped off the Antarctic peninsula, unable to move, unable to escape. The crew, including a young Roald Amundsen, who later became the first man to reach the South Pole, and American Dr. Frederick Cook, was completely cut off from the outside world. As the polar night set in, the sun vanished for months. The men endured unrelenting darkness, biting cold and growing despair. 2 members of the expedition died. The rest began slipping into depression and madness. Scurvy and frostbite took hold. Cook improvised treatments, insisted on routines, and forced the crew to eat raw penguin and seal meat to stay alive, measures that almost certainly prevented further deaths. When the light finally returned, the ship was still frozen in place. Their only hope? Cut their way out using hand saws, picks, and explosives. The exhausted crew spent weeks carving a channel through over a mile of solid ice. In early 1899, Belgica broke free and made the harrowing return across the Drake Passage, battered but afloat, broken but alive. The greatest survival story ever told. But if you want to understand what true survival looks like, you need to hear about Sir Ernest Shackleton and his 1914 to 1917 Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. The mission's goal was ambitious: complete the first land crossing of Antarctica. Shackleton and his crew of 27 men set sail aboard the Endurance. They never even reached the continent's mainland. In January 1915, their ship became trapped in pack ice in the Weddell Sea. For months, the Endurance drifted helplessly before being slowly crushed by the ice. It finally sank on November 21, 1915, stranding the crew in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Surviving on limited rations and a diet of seal and penguin meat, the crew endured months on the sea ice before eventually escaping to the desolate Elephant Island. But they were still far from rescue. Here's where the story becomes legendary. Shackleton and 5 men launched a daring open-boat voyage across the deadly Drake Passage in a small lifeboat named the James Caird. Think about this for a moment. No modern equipment, no engine, no GPS, just a compass, raw determination, and 22 feet of wood between them and certain death. Battling towering waves, sub-zero temperatures, and relentless winds, they reached South Georgia Island after a 16-day crossing, one of the most extraordinary feats in maritime history. From there, Shackleton secured help and returned to rescue the rest of his crew. Astonishingly, not a single man was lost during the ordeal, despite more than 500 days stranded in Antarctic conditions. Shackleton's leadership and the successful crossing of the Drake Passage have become legendary examples of endurance, navigation, and survival under impossible odds. Modern technology, ancient dangers. You might think that with all our modern technology, GPS, satellite weather, reinforced hulls, the Drake Passage has been tamed. You'd be wrong. In 2022, the Viking Polaris, a cruise ship with reinforced hulls, was struck by a 16-meter wave in the Drake Passage. It shattered windows, injured passengers, and killed a 62-year-old woman. The culprit? A rogue wave, a rare, massive wave that appears without warning, like a liquid skyscraper rising from nowhere. It proves that even in the 21st century, the Drake Passage remains unpredictable. Technology can help, but it can't eliminate the danger. The gateway to the bottom of the world. Despite the risks, the Drake Passage is one of the most important stretches of ocean on the planet. Scientists study it because it's a gateway to the Southern Ocean, where cold, oxygen-rich water from Antarctica mixes with warmer waters from the north. This mixing helps drive the global conveyor belt of ocean circulation, essential for regulating Earth's climate. Without it, the planet would heat unevenly. Ecosystems would collapse. Research vessels crossing the Drake often collect data on salinity, temperature, and marine life. The area is especially rich in krill, a key species in the Antarctic food web. Every year, thousands of tourists attempt to cross the Drake Passage to reach Antarctica. Most leave from Ushuaia, Argentina, the southernmost city in the world. The trip takes about 2 days. If the weather is calm, passengers call it the Drake Lake. If it's rough, and it usually is, they call it the Drake Shake. Seasickness is common, but the payoff is extraordinary, setting foot on the most remote continent on Earth. The calculated gamble. For shipping companies, timing a Drake crossing is a calculated decision. Captains monitor satellite data for wind, waves, and ice movement. They may delay departures or alter course to avoid the worst conditions. But sometimes there's no avoiding it. Sometimes you just have to roll the dice and hope nature is in a forgiving mood. The Drake Passage is not just a strip of sea, it's a living challenge. Every crossing is proof of nature's force, and every success is earned. The unconquerable. The Drake Passage connects continents. It powers climate systems. It has shaped exploration history, and it continues to test anyone who dares to cross. Whether you're a tourist, a scientist, or an explorer, one rule applies. No one conquers the Drake Passage. At best, you pass through it. It's a reminder that despite all our technology, all our knowledge, all our confidence, nature still holds the ultimate trump card. The Drake Passage doesn't care about your schedule, it doesn't care about your experience, it doesn't care about your survival, it simply exists. Waiting, testing, claiming. And that's what makes it the deadliest waterway on Earth. If the Drake Passage made you feel something, like it. If it made you think, share it. And you, would you cross the Drake Passage after everything you know now? Subscribe for more stories like this.